and welcome. My name's Adam Curtis. I'm the Senior Director of Corporate Investigations for AFIMAC Global. Thank you for joining me today to just give you a really good overview and some in-depth knowledge on open source investigations and also some social media searching as well. It's a topic now that's really becoming pretty popular, we're finding, and I think that you'll probably find it pretty interesting. So I just want to give you an overview of our company. So AFIMAC, so we not only solely do the corporate investigations, but we're also involved in executive protection as well as risk management. We're also involved in cargo screening and escorts as well as disaster and emergency response. We have several offices. We have one that's based in Milton in Ontario. We also have two in the United States as well as Mexico and Sao Paulo. So the agenda for today is the social media landscape. So I'll be touching on exactly what social media is and the platforms that it has. Also, we'll touch on open source investigations, which is separate from social media. We'll also look at how AFIMAC conducts social media investigations and open source, how viable that is for you, what sort of open source investigations we can conduct. We'll also touch on some social media geo-fencing, which is very, very interesting and provides a great tool. And then I can also provide you with some pretty interesting case studies, and then we'll finish off with some law aspects, which will give you a pretty good indication of where we stand on a legal basis in regards to these forms of investigations. So the social media landscape, exactly what is it? So I think we're all familiar with probably most of these when we look at Pinterest or Google, Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn. They're the pretty common ones, and they're the ones that are most used now on a global scale. If we have a look at the social media landscape, and the next two slides are I think quite interesting because it provides us a really good understanding of the volume of social media globally now and the extent that people are using it. And I like the one active internet users, which is the second from the left, 21% increase last year with just on 525 million viewers. And the last one, active mobile social accounts, which is quite astounding, 23% increase last year with just on 313 million active users. So it's quite significant. And I think this actually even further highlights the rapid expansion of social media and globally how it's really touching everybody. On a 60-second basis, we look at Facebook, for example, just on 700,000 logins in every 60 seconds. YouTube, just on 2.78 million every 60 seconds. And Instagram, which is a very common one, just under 40,000 posts every 60 seconds. So pretty significant volumes there on a global scale, and that's increasing year by year. So how can we use social media and open source investigations? One of the key clients that we're seeing now is within the insurance industry, and we combine social media investigations also with open source, and I think the two work very well together because often the information that we obtain on social media platforms, we can use that to conduct social media investigations. So for instance, in a disability claim, we can actually go back historically, conduct a historical search for an insurance client, and we can look at what an individual's actually posted, whether it be last year or the year before, and to see how active they are. It's becoming a pretty significant tool in regards to placing someone at a specific location at a specific time and date as well. Social media and open source investigations is also now being used by a lot of legal firms, and there's a myriad of uses that can be used for. One thing we're finding, again, disability claims, but we're also finding that legal firms are coming to us in regards to establishing the bona fides of particular individuals who are perhaps lodging claims, or in the corporate sector, where we're finding now that companies are coming and requesting that we conduct both social media and open source investigations on a prospective executive employee. So what is social media investigations? Well, it basically comprises of four main concepts. It starts with the social media footprint, which gives us the platforms and that the person's on. And I'll show you a report shortly of the footprint and the information it can glean. And basically it sets up the social media investigation for us, because it identifies the platforms that the individual's on, and it also can provide us a really good indicator of how active they are on those platforms. With that initial application and the information gleaned from that, we can then use that to conduct some social media surveillance. And I'll touch on that in shortly when I'll show you a pretty good report which provides some really good information on what the person's actually posting or their activity on social media. And that's historical as well. With both those pieces of information, we can then resort to open source, and I'll provide a really good insight into what open source is, and simply it's everything other than social media. And we can combine all those and we can do some social media geofencing. It's not being used, I don't think, as much as what it should be. I think it's a valuable tool. It has many aspects to it, and it can be modified as well. So I'll give you some pretty good examples of how that can be used. So the social media footprint basically establishes the profiles that the individual's on. It can capture their handles, so we can identify the particular individual. We can customize it to suit your needs, and I'll touch on that with some keywords that you can input or provide us to input. It provides a significant report which is easy to read and shows the person's contacts and their activity. We can also go back historically with that, and it's also multilingual. So here's your social media footprint. As you can see, it's pretty easy to read, and it primarily looks at the major social media platforms, so your Twitter, YouTube, Pinterest, Instagram. If you have a look at the column online profile, so that is the person's identifier, or what is commonly referred to as their handles, and that identifies the person, and that's going to be pretty significant when we go to geofencing. When we also have a look at the report, it can tell us the amount of posts that they've conducted over that particular month. So in this particular instance, we have a look at Twitter, just under 655 posts in the last month. We have the number of contacts on Twitter that the person has, so just over 1,200. And the confidence level is rated from 1 to 3. So what that refers to is how confident we are that the individual that we see with the handles under the profile is actually the subject that the client wants us to investigate. If you have a look at down the very bottom with Instagram, you can see that that's got some pretty good activity as well. So we've got 92 posts just last month with 1,100 contacts. So in the middle, what we see is there's not much activity when we're looking at, say, LinkedIn, YouTube, blog, or Pinterest. So from an investigation standpoint, it's a pretty good tool, because we can look at social media surveillance, and if we were to do that, we'd probably target Twitter and Instagram, because we can see that that's where most of the activity is, and that's where a high number of contacts are. So now we have the handles of the individual, we've confirmed it's them, we can see their activity, so then we've decided that we're going to do some social media surveillance on Twitter and Instagram, for an example, on that particular individual. So this is the sort of report we get, and you can see it on the right. It's pretty easy to read, and you'll see that on the top square there, you'll see where the link is highlighted. You can actually, with the report, go into that link and open it up, and you can view that yourself. You'll see there are a number of key words there that are in red. And what they are, they're the key words or predetermined characteristics that the client wishes us to really look at. So, for instance, if a normal report contains approximately 25 to 40 pages, but you're only interested in some specific topics, we can punch in keywords, and those keywords will come out in red. So when you're flicking through the report, within a couple of minutes you're going to be able to identify the areas that you really want to look at, and so that the tweets or the photos on Pinterest or other information, you can pretty much discard that and just target really the ones you want. Now, these alerts are real time, so that's a key, and also too, what it can provide is the person's GPS coordinates as well, which can become pretty important if we're looking at physical surveillance later on down the road. So once we have social media, we then have open source. So I often get asked the question, are they the same, different? Well, social media is the platforms that we've just seen, but open source is everything apart from social media. So a picture tells 1,000 words, so when we primarily think of open source, we consider it as an iceberg, and that there's a lot of information on the surface, but there's a lot more that's actually below. And we often refer that as the deep web. And often that's a place where a lot of public really don't understand where to access it and how to access it. So open source information, where can it be found? So we like to sort of coin it as everywhere. So we're talking about in the media, so if a person is actually being depicted in a photograph with a hockey team, for instance, in a local newspaper, or we might look at their professional and academic careers, whether they be at, in university or high school or a local swimming club. We can look at company websites. LinkedIn is a classic one where it can provide various links to where the person has been in previously. And we can also look at obviously internet directories as well. It's estimated that roughly 90% of valuable intelligence comes from open source, and that's a pretty significant percentage. Open source investigations, well, primarily the more information that you give us, then raises the increase of the more information that we can retrieve and provide to the client. So we obviously have the standard ones, which is a complete name, telephone number and address, and date of birth. But more importantly, what we're finding is if we can have, say, a person's email address or an educational institution that they were with. A real interesting one is the person's hobbies or groups they're affiliated with. We're finding that that's a key one where we're really finding a lot of hits now. And also to a person's previous addresses. And that can be a key too, because if we look at a social media platform such as Facebook, for instance, a person may have created their Facebook page several years ago at an address where they're no longer residing. So if we were to search on their current address, perhaps we might not find as much information, yet if we had the previous address, it could connect us to other social media platforms. One of the main questions I often get asked in regards to open source is the security of it and anonymity. And we use a proxy server, which is used to hide us from the person that we're actually investigating. And we store all the information securely as well. So LinkedIn is a classic example where you can actually see that the person who's looked you up and the amount of contacts that visited your profile on LinkedIn. When we conduct those searches, it's completely secure, and we hide it as well, which is pretty important when we're conducting an investigation. Capturing and recording is a key component, particularly from an evidentiary standpoint. If the information that we're gleaning is going to be used in any forms of criminal or civil jurisdictional court purposes, it's important that it's captured properly and we record it in a chronological fashion so that we can present it later on at evidence in court. Our processing procedures with open source and social media investigations is pretty simple, but it's a key component. We must save the content, download it correctly and record it, and the chain of custody is very, very important. So for instance, when we're going through a person's social media profile, we document obviously the date and time that we're going into that profile, where we're retrieving the information from, and then we store it and capture it and how we do that. So we provide a consistent continuity chain of custody. So some of the results, and it's pretty interesting. Resumes is a key one. We're finding that we do locate a lot of subjects' resumes, which provides a lot of information historically in regards to the individual. We also can find that criminal and civil court cases that are out on open source is a key as well, because there is a distinct difference between a person being criminally charged as opposed to actually being convicted. And we're finding that there often can be a lot more information on open source where we can access those court records in regards to matters that are before the courts. We're also finding obviously the newspapers, blogs and articles, so if a person is in the media a fair bit, we can locate them pretty quickly, and it provides an excellent avenue of inquiry. Some other results, key ones there. Reverse imaging searches, we can do that, and that can be quite interesting. We also look at Canada, the US and international public records as well, so it's just not limited to Canada. Social media users and their name searches is pretty important as well. When we touch on the privacy, so primarily how we like to see it is the more information you post, then you just leave breadcrumbs. So everything is on the social networking sites, it's no longer private. And I like to give the example that I may have my privacy settings on my Facebook and my Twitter and Instagram accounts, which is fine, but my friend may not and wish to take photos or post certain things with me being involved in it, and it can be captured in that manner as well. So it may not be me that is actually posting, but maybe one of my associates, and we can glean that information. So social media geofencing, as I said earlier, I think it's a tool that is not often used, but I think we're going to see an increase because of the flexibility of the product, the information that can be gleaned and how flexible it is. So basically how we refer it to is at your particular work location, if you would like to glean all the information that's coming out of that building, we can actually put a geofence around it and capture all the social media information that's coming out of there. It's an invaluable tool. With that as well, we can capture the person's handles who is actually posting it, and that provides pretty valuable information as well. Classic example is a current client of ours that we're having several bomb threats in the United States. So we put a geofence not only around that particular facility, but also put it around the actual city that it was in, and we put in keywords such as bomb, explosion, incendiary device, and captured all the information in that geofence. So geofencing, commonly used with law enforcement and government agencies, completely legal and it's invisible. It has fantastic flexibility as far as filtering and customizing your searches, and that's pretty adaptable. And it can capture both geographically, and we can also pinpoint on a particular individual. And it's also historical, and I'll provide a great example of that shortly. So what can it do? As I said earlier, it can set up by location or a particular individual. It's historical. We can filter it by putting in key predetermined words. It's real time. provides great analytics in a report and its ability to export results as well. So here's a classic case study that we undertook for a client in February of this year. We were asked to try and obtain any information in regards to a motor vehicle accident that occurred on the 23rd of February this year at the intersection of Bathurst and Highway 7 in Thornhill in Ontario. So we established a historical social media geofence for that particular date and time in that particular area. And this took us about 12 minutes. And what we found is that an individual had posted this on the internet, which had coincidentally the actual intersection of what we were looking at and the specific date also. So when we delved into the video, which I unfortunately can't play for you today, but we can send the link if you would like, what we found was that the individual who posted it actually had a dash cam and was positioned at the intersection waiting to execute a left-hand turn, and there was two vehicles in front of him that were also doing the same. The first vehicle that proceeded through the intersection was actually involved in a motor car accident, which the individual captured on his dash cam and subsequently posted it. So what does that provide? It's a potential witness, and the video was posted, so that's evidence which can be used for insurance purposes later on. What we then did with that information is, and if you'll have a look down on the fourth dot, you'll see the user name, and it is Bukharov. So we found that, and then we decided to search the user, and we found a gentleman with a similar sort of name, and you'll see him there wearing the blue tank top and the hat. So we found him on YouTube, and so we started doing some searching on him. And we found him on LinkedIn with his current employer and their address. So we could supply that to the client. There's a potential witness. He's gleaned the information, and then they can use it from there. So as I said, from an insurance claim perspective, that's vital because often claims are investigated, and that could cause an insurance company to award the claim to the claimant. Open source investigations. So should we keep at arm's length? And constantly getting asked this question now, and I think it's a key point because with a lot of this information now, it's completely automated and it's not manual, so it saves a lot of time. So in the previous years, individuals would be at their desk going through for hours on the internet trying to locate a lot of this information, whereas this is, most of the time it can be pretty much automated, and it provides a great reporting and analytical tool. The IP address is not recorded, so the subject that perhaps we're investigating, our IP address will not be connected back to us, and that can be a key point. Significant increase in productivity. So again, if you're a subject matter expert in a particular field, pretty quickly you can get into certain areas. So rather than have someone who's maybe not as savvy in social media investigations, may take them a lot longer than what it would do someone who has expertise and is doing it on a daily basis. Two key points down the bottom would be expert testimony. So the report that's given in regards to social media and open source investigations can be used in all courts of criminal jurisdiction, which I mentioned earlier, and the continuity of evidence as well. So your key chains of custody are followed completely and can be produced in that manner to the court, and that's a pretty big key as well. So social media and open source investigations and how we can connect it to physical surveillance. One of the key things that we're seeing now is that social media and open source investigations can take place instead of utilising physical surveillance. And also, if we want to use physical surveillance, we can use social media and open source investigations to be target specific. So one of the classic examples I would use here is that if a client, for instance, would like us to conduct an investigation on a subject in regards to a disability claim, we may conduct a social media open source investigation, establish the platforms that the individual's on. We may conduct some social media surveillance and monitor them, monitor their activities, and then determine when and where they may be at a particular date and time, and then we can target specific our physical surveillance to the information that we obtain from the open source and social media investigation. It decreases your physical surveillance costs most definitely, your target specific, and it's a great evidentiary tool. Pricing is pretty significant as well when you're talking about the differences between physical surveillance and social media and open source investigations. So typically your social media footprint is $60, which is relatively inexpensive, and there's a 24-hour turnaround. So with that, again, as I said earlier, you establish the platforms that the individual's on, and you also get a report of recent posts that they've been as well. So you can get a pretty good idea of the platforms that they're on and how much activity. And when we have a look at the ROI, so we look at the difference between traditional surveillance and social media surveillance. We're looking at it's about 78 cents an hour as opposed to $75 to $80 an hour in traditional surveillance. So your ROI is about 96 to 1, so it's pretty significant. So here's some great case studies. So for instance, we were tasked to locate a Russian woman and serve legal documents, and we exhausted all avenues of inquiry to try and locate the female to serve the documents. So we decided to conduct some social media and open source investigation, and what we found is that the female had posted on Twitter some photos from New Year's Eve, which really didn't lead us down to much. But then we found that she'd also posted this caption, and you'll see that there is the names on the shopping bags there of Metro, which we did some searching and found that it belonged to a supermarket chain in Europe. But more significantly, the female posted this several days after the photo of the shopping bags, and what we found is that she had left her privacy settings off, so we were able to capture her GPS location, which we established that she was actually in Russia at the time of posting this. So we were able to send the documents over there for them to be served. So a little bit of case law. So Tambosa is a classic one from British Columbia several years ago. So this particular female, and at the present time, she was not awarded the claim, and she actually had to bear costs in regard to it, and she's now appealed that, so it's up for appeal at the moment. She had claimed there was 2 injuries, which primarily consisted that she had physical as well as psychological injuries. A social media investigation was conducted, and they gleaned approximately over 300 posts of her on Facebook, undertaking numerous activities such as ziplining in Thailand, at a bar, undertaking karaoke, and those sort of activities. What we found was that the trial judge basically stated that he believed that the female had fabricated the injuries due to the amount of information that was contained on Facebook. And it's pretty evident in that the judge carried all that weight based on the information from Facebook and social media investigations. So it was a pretty significant award, and it's one that is commonly used now, and it'll be interesting to see how that pans out later on in the appeal process. McDonald and Levy is another one. Again, it refers to social media investigations and social life, and primarily looks at would the individual have considered it a breach of privacy under human rights. In this particular case, the judge said that no, that it's a social forum and the person had placed items out in the social media that a normal person would reasonably believe that other people would have access to. Leduc and Roman is another one. Again, it's a civil proceeding, involved Facebook postings relating to a particular action of the individual, and again it referred to the privacy issues, and that again the judge awarded that the fact that the person had actually posted on a social media platform and the knowing or believing that individuals would have access to it. So, any questions? So I thank you for your time, and should you have any questions, my email address is at the bottom. Feel free to contact me or AFIMAC Global, and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Thank you for your time.